Okay, let's get this underway. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for dialing in this evening. I'm Brian Barclay, and I'm the Queensland State Manager for Opportunity International Australia. And I'm very pleased to be your host this evening. We're excited to have Simon Lynch with us to share on a very timely topic, COVID-19 and the impact on communities living in poverty. We'll also be crossing to Zesly Pah, the CEO of our partner TLM in West Timor, in Indonesia. But first, a few things about how we'll be running this evening. We've got a great crowd online, and we'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can during our Q&A session at the end. You can also use the chat option at the bottom of the screen to make comments or interact with each other. And finally, with regards to the housekeeping, we'll be making a recording of this webinar, and this will be sent out to you in the next day or so. Now, for those of you who may be new to Opportunity, just a little about us. We give small loans, often as little as a few $100s, to families living in poverty to help them grow their own small businesses. This enables them to earn a regular income so that they can feed, clothe, and send their children to school. So we're helping families to achieve self-sufficiency with dignity and with purpose. And we work with local microfinance partners in India and Indonesia, and helping more than 6 million families with loans. And 98% of these loans are repaid and recycled. So we're able to help more and more families over time. We also have programs that address other barriers that keep families in poverty. And these are programs to help families live safe, healthy lives and to send their children to school. Now, we are, of course, in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, which is affecting all of us here in Australia, but we also can't forget the devastating impact this pandemic is having on the most vulnerable. It's the families living in poverty in countries like India and Indonesia. And it now gives me great pleasure to introduce Simon Lynch, our Community Development and Indonesia Director. Simon is a development expert who has spent more than 20 years working with our partners and families living in poverty right across Asia. Simon, it is so good to have you with us this evening to share with us, and it's over to you now.
Thank you, Brian. As you know, I've been asked to share what it's like for a person living in poverty and how COVID has affected that. And from the outset, I just want to state it is a little arrogant for a middle-class white Australian to assume that I know what it's like to be in poverty. So I just want to say that what I'm going to share is what the people who are living in poverty have taught me over 20-odd years as I've lived with them and as I've worked with them. And some of it was quite surprising to me, and I hope will be of interest to you. I'll also be sharing about the impact that our programs are having and the impact that COVID-19 is having on those people that we work with. I'm also really excited that we can do a crossover to Zesly over in Eastern Indonesia. And yeah, look forward to what she has to share. So my first real experience and immersion of living with people in poverty was when I went with my wife to live in India, and we were we worked for a few years for 3 months in a slum called Lok Sabha. If you could put the slide over, that would be great, please, Ben. That's great. So Lok Sabha is actually the middle picture there. It's an amazing place, diverse, vibrant, It smells, the sewer just makes you, yeah, does turn your stomach. 200 people share a tap, you know, everywhere you go, there's 3 or 4 people to a bed. And if any of you have ever actually been into slums, you'll notice that initially that you're actually quite fascinated by what's going on. But slowly, as we were there longer term, we really got to know the people, and it was them that really changed our view on things. We saw the despair that many of them faced, but we also learned some things. And one of the things I learned was that people that live in poverty are often genuinely happy. They take every opportunity to enjoy a celebration or to get together. Patrick Swayze made a book called The City of Joy famous around how good the relationships were. And I remember Mother Teresa actually once said that there is nothing as tragic as the loneliness of the West. And even the leprosy of Calcutta was not nearly as bad as what she saw of the broken relationships that are often found in the West. But one thing that became really obvious to me was just how vulnerable the people were. One of the things that highlighted that to me is I was playing cricket with a bunch of kids in the slum, at probably about my 14th game in the last week. They seemed to love bowling out an Aussie with very challenged cricket skills. And I was asked to take some time to go and just visit on a guy with tuberculosis. So I went into a hut. It was about 12 foot square. And as I walked in, I was just hit by 2 things immediately. One was that the wall he was facing in his single bed looked like it was alive because of all of the phlegm that he'd coughed up on there. The other was that there was an 8-year-old boy beside him holding his hand, trying to comfort his dad as his dad went through that. And it just struck me, this was a preventable disease, and there was no way that this kid wasn't going to catch it. So the chances of both the father and the child surviving it were slim. And I looked at this kid and I thought, you really should be playing cricket with everybody else, not in this situation. And it just drove home to me how that happiness can be snatched from them, from something that is so simple, some health issue that is actually preventable. One of the stories, that's what you see in, you know, the slums, but also you see it in the rural areas. So I met with a family in an island called Sabu. It's a very small, dry island in eastern Indonesia. And Zadrik and Delina, who you can see on that photo, beautiful family. You can see their daughter and their grandkids behind them. They were just a bundle of joy, proud to show off that the loan that we'd given them, they'd use for seeds and fertilizer, and she'd use some of it as well for weaving, and they were actually building a great life. I was so impressed. The photo I took that you can see at the moment, we actually put into a calendar for opportunity. And I got the opportunity to go back and visit them again about a year later. And I took it back. And even though this photo isn't that great quality, I just wanted to show you, it was heartbreaking to go and show this photo and show this calendar to Delina and a granddaughter, because in the meantime, Zadrek has passed away from, again, a preventable disease. His lungs and his kidneys are given way because of a lack of water and a lack of clean sanitation that they were living in. It just drove home to me again just how vulnerable the people can be. The other thing that becomes really apparent quite quickly is that the poor are not lazy. If they don't work, they do not eat. It was driven home to me really early on, again in that experience in India. I was walking around and I had to meet somebody and I was absolutely lost. I had no idea where to find this person, but I had an address. And I passed a guy who was shining shoes on the street corner, and intuitively he picked up that I was the lost tourist. And he just came up and sort of nodded and sort of said, "Can I help?" And I showed him the address, and luckily he had enough ability to read that he said he knew where it was. So he packed up his meagre sort of box with some polish and rags in it and walked with me about 1 kilometre and showed me the place that I was meeting this person. And I obviously went to give him a tip and thank him. And he said, "Sir, I'm not a beggar. I shine shoes for a living. So next time you're at that corner where I work, can I shine your shoes?" And he walked away. And I was dumbfounded, and I've been dumbfounded many times since, because it really hit me that the poor don't want us to just treat them with a handout. They want to actually be able to look after themselves and their families the same way that you and I do. And any program where we can build dignity in the process, whether that be, I've worked volunteer on the streets of Sydney, the way that we treat homeless people, or with Mother Teresa in the House of the Dying, Calicut in Calcutta, that we were holding the hands of people as they died. The key is to do it in a way that makes people feel better about themselves and dignified. And that is why I'm passionate about microfinance. Because when I came across microfinance, where we give people training and a loan, I saw that we were starting to see people not as the problem, but part of the solution. That they were actually able to work themselves out of poverty if they were given a chance. One example that I met was a lady called Charlotta. Charlotta had been not given the greatest of starts in life. She was born blind in one eye and partially blind in the other. Her husband died, and she wasn't able to, she went as a maid and was working as a maid and earning about 80 cents a day. It wasn't enough to keep her daughter Misra, so she had to put her in an orphanage. She tried to break free of that and started going from door to door washing people's laundry, but it still only earned her about $1.20 a day, until she came up with an idea to turn these into feather dusters. Ben, if you move that to the next one, there's these feather dusters. Then we were able, by giving her a loan of about just under 90 Australian dollars, she now earns over $8 a day. And she's able to look after her daughter. Misra's in the bottom right-hand corner of those photos and goes to school. And I got to go back and meet her again. And she said to me, a bit angrily actually, I was a bit taken back. She said, "Oh, sorry, Mum, I'm belly bubby." And I was saying, "So why do you want to buy a pig?" And she looked at me and she said, "Because there's good money in pigs." And what I heard was not how good money is in pigs. What I heard is, I am no longer a maid or someone that goes around begging for people's laundry. I am a businesswoman who has been able to take a loan, create a small business, pay back on time every time, and now I want to step up to the next level and build some more business skills. That to me is the key to bringing around stability and overcoming vulnerability. And the initiative that people use is incredible. I just showed a picture here, and basically this chap, his name is Efrutis, and he takes metal from printing presses and he makes these initially. That's what you're seeing there. And then from these, he produces spoons and produces forks and all sorts of things. The level of ingenuity, I could show you purses, I could show you bags made out of washing materials, I could show you all sorts. They are just incredible the way that the poor will turn a small amount of resource into something really significant. So, are our projects making a difference? Well, as a sector, are we making a difference? You know, world poverty, the extreme poverty is halved since the 90s, as has infant mortality, child deaths and other things. Opportunity International alone, as Brian said, just in Asia, Australia, we're serving 6 million families. Each of those families averages about 5 people. That means we're actually helping more people that live in Australia to establish and build a business, to work their way out of poverty. That is exciting. That is the type of impact that I love to see. We're also going into much more remote areas. So not only are we expanding in numbers, but we're going into really remote areas in northern India or in eastern Indonesia and elsewhere. And we're taking those relationships we have, and in partnerships with other organisations, we're adding education, because education is the key to breaking the cycle and giving kids opportunities and mindsets their parents never had. And we're adding health. We're using the clients themselves, and we're providing health education and other resources to help them overcome some of the health issues, because health is the #1 issue that gets people back into poverty. And that is why COVID is so threatening to us, that it could potentially rip away a lot of those gains we've had, and the preventative health issues that we could somehow overcome could be so tragic to the poor. Now, you probably have looked at the numbers, as I have, and seen that in India there's probably, they're reporting about 1,400 deaths and about 900 in Indonesia. We know that they are testing like 1/50th of the number of people per million people that we're testing over here. It really isn't an accurate figure. We really don't know the extent to which it has spread. I do understand, though, that if you're in a country that has very inadequate medical facilities, spending a lot of money on testing to highlight the problem isn't going to really succeed in addressing it. In India, they have had the lockdown, so they went hard. Modi went hard to begin with and locked everyone down, which I think was a really good approach, although it did leave hundreds of thousands, possibly in a million, of people that were itinerant workers in the city. As soon as they lost their job and their livelihood, they also lost where they could live. So they've then moved back to their houses in the villages. But that has been a traumatic experience, which I'm sure also spread COVID in the process. But now they've moved back to a zoning process. This morning it was saying that they've gone and basically identified the hotspots and the non-hotspots, which is also the approach that Jokowi, the president of Indonesia, has taken. So in the places where they believe there's more COVID, such as Jakarta, they're limiting the number of people that can go together. What is really surprising, though, is it's actually at the village level and the local regional level that they are becoming more stringent about it. And they're actually locking those down. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about that because I think this is the ideal thing for Zesly to share with us. So I'll introduce Zesly now. I've known Zesly for just under 20 years. She's an amazing woman, and she has worked with the poor all that time, with people living in poverty all that time. She's taken many roles, both in operations and finance and audit and other areas, and is now the CEO, the leader of an organisation called TLM, which is one of our partners in Eastern Indonesia. So I'll hand over to Zesly, who can give us some real on-ground experience of what's happening over there now.
Thank you, Simon. Hello, everyone. Warm greetings from TLM in Eastern Indonesia. Thank you for being with me tonight. I would like to take this chance to share with you about our operation during COVID and also the lives of the people that we are working with. In Eastern Indonesia, in this region, life here is already difficult even before COVID comes. As you can hear from Simon's presentation, that 80% of the people here living below poverty line, which means that they can only earn, they are able only to earn 1%, $1 per day. When Corona comes, local governments here start to locking down all the villages. So that has made the lives of the people here are even more difficult. TLM, here at TLM, we also decided to locking down our operation for 3 weeks. And then we did telephone survey just to talk with our clients to find whether they are all right or not. So we are grateful because all of our clients are well. So we decided to recommence our operation. Although we have to, do lots of negotiations with local governments and army. We also are grateful because 85% of our clients, they have said to us that they're committed to repay these loans, and they really hope that we can give them some more time to do it. So the situation here also affect our staff. I have around 600 people that working with us, which means we are indirectly serving around almost 2,000 families. And with my staff, they all are afraid of lose their jobs. In a few remote locations, we start to see violence happen, and also some robbery happen. Please go to next slide. Ben? Right, so this is a story of our typical client, Marta. She is a widow with 4 children. Every day, she lives by selling cakes and vegetables in 3 local markets. So when market stopped, she decided to change the business location. So she sells around the village and sell it at home. But she can only get much lower income from that. So she cannot provide as normal, provide the family as normal. Sometimes she must to borrow rice from the family, from her neighbors, so that she can provide the children. She's been with us for 3 years and has been very good. Just last week, she said to us that she cannot pay the loan payment. We then went to meet her and found that she has still have the spirit to fight against the situation and hope that she can continue borrowing from us. So we love to support her and have promised that we're gonna journey with her. And this is the next slide. This is a group of fishermen. There are about 27 women that working in this group. They usually catch fishes and sell to a big buyer in Kupang City. Before COVID, their life have been good. They have a good sellings. But now what happened is that the buyer stopped buying fish from her. Even from them, even the buyer cannot pay the last selling that they have made. Alternatively, these people, they have jointly established an alternative business, which is collecting firewoods from the places around their village. So now they start to earn a little money, and they still committed or keen to repay loans to us. So we really respect this group, and we have come to them and said that although you have difficulties life, but we are there with you because we've been journeying a long time together. So what PLM do right now is that we're gonna continue supporting so that they can survive with the business and give them some flexibility with time so that they can also can also provide enough for the family. So that is some of the stories I would like to share with you. And Simon, now I'm back to you.
Thanks, Zesly. I've been with Zesly to some of these communities, and particularly as it gets more towards the dry season, which will be more around August, September. And even when they've been able to save and have been able to do their jobs, they get to that point, and I've seen them so desperate that they've been eating bark and things. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like for Martha and others if they can't earn this income and make those savings as they go to those harder points of time. COVID throws up a couple of real challenges for people living in poverty. One, it's so hard to do social distancing, particularly when you're in slums and particularly when you're in the cities, but even when you're in the rural areas, the density of people and the markets means that it's extremely hard to do. And the misinformation that's passed around means that a lot of people don't know how to do it, why to do it, what's the whole point. There's also the challenge of sanitation. Many of the people that we work with don't have access to water, let alone soap. So to be able to regularly wash your hands and wash the rest of you when you're exposed to somebody that's been coughing around you is so, so difficult. And even if they weren't to catch COVID, the whole idea of staying at home means that there's a potential that you will die or starve at home, because if you can't earn income and you're living hand to mouth, it's only going to be a short period of time before you're begging off your neighbours and then they're going to run out. So the challenges are immense. It is true that the least really do get hit the hardest. You know what, there was another perspective I think that we need to look at. And that for a lot of people in poverty, this is just another thing to rip away the meagre resources that they have. Whether it be TB that I mentioned before, or malaria, or diarrhea, or tsunamis, or hurricanes, or corrupt authorities and police, whatever it may be, unfortunately, our clients and people living in poverty are so used to having what little they've got taken away that they've become, though, incredibly resilient. They have learned how to bounce back as soon as they're given an opportunity. I said before that the poor, I've come to believe, do not want charity, which is just temporary. They want to be able to provide for their families in a sustainable, ongoing way that allows them to overcome the vulnerabilities of life that can rip them away from some rich relationships and happy times that they spend. They're going to have to survive through this, and we will do what we can to help with educating them through our relationships and providing soap and provisions, essential items. Where we'll really start to come back and focus, though, is as they start to move out of this, we will help them to rebuild. And that will be through training and the provision, generally, of top-up loans. For most people, they will have eaten through their assets, like literally eaten many of their assets, particularly those working in food and kiosks, etc. So they'll just need some money to top up their stock and get back into business. And that's where Zesly and her team and others of our other partners will become involved. The reality is, we are their stimulus package. We are the people that they will turn to give them a helping hand up. But it's not just about putting money into an account. It's about giving them hope. See, if we can show again that we believe in them again, if we can show that we see them as part of the solution and not the problem, then they too continue to believe in themselves. They too, like Charlotta, continue to have the strength and the belief that they are business women that can work their way out of this and make a future for their families. Thanks, Brian. I'll leave it for there. I'm sure we've got some questions that we can, yep, we've got Zesly on board, or I'm happy to answer those. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Simon and Zesly. That was great. And look, we've got some great questions here, so we'll get right into those. And quite a few for Zesly here, because it's very special having Zesly with us, of course. And one of those, Zesly's, is what are the challenges that you face as the leader of TLM at this moment in time? And yeah, we've just got a couple of minutes there, so if you could keep that answer quite brief. Thanks, Zesly.
Thank you. My biggest challenge right now is to find the right balance between understanding clients, supporting them, protecting my staff, and also making sure that TLM as an institution lasts so far.
Thanks, Zesly. And another one here for you. Do you think that your clients' businesses will be able to survive? And how will they go in being able to make their loan repayments?
Right. Traditionally, our clients are farmers. So as long as they have their own land, then they will just continue to live. I hope that markets will be slowly reopened, even in limitation. And by having that, which it means that our clients will live and they will be able to make some money. The good things about working with these people is that not like big businesses, our clients can easily, when things get normal, re-establishing the business, or even to change the business into something new. But that is the reason why makes them strong today.
Oh, that's great. And there's another one here as well for you, Zesly. What is TLM doing with regards to health and hygiene education at this time? Obviously, that's a very pertinent thing right now in the midst of this COVID crisis.
Although we've been rejected in some villages that are very strict with the situation, but we are grateful because we are finally re-enter. And by re-entering, we use that opportunity to do things like educating the people, partnering with local institutions so that they understand about what is COVID and how to protect themselves. But we also provide items like masks, hand sanitizers, and then other equipment so that they can start using it and then being a sample for the other villages that we haven't working with. So that's all we can do during this season.
Okay. And Simon, there's a great question for you here. Opportunity's been operating now for about 45 years. And we've sort of helped people we're working with overcome and communities from other crises before, like the tsunami back in the day. And what are some of the key lessons learned from some of those crises we may have been involved in previously, such as the tsunami?
I think some of those lessons that we learned there was, there is a period when you have something like that where you have to go in and really work just with the emergency that's right before you there. And so there is definitely a period where you've got to bring about some stability and you are in the emergency process. I'm not sure this applies so much to the COVID situation, but certainly in those hurricane, tsunami type situations, you have to get some of the infrastructure and that back. And so you really are in a crisis type situation. What we learned from opportunities perspective was that because the poor don't actually have much, in economic terms, it's called barriers of entry, which means they don't actually need a lot of resources to start up a business. They don't need to get regulations and sign off laws and everything else. They can jump straight into a business. So you can actually bet on people that they are looking for ways to earn a living, and that they will use whatever ingenuity and tenacity they have to do it. So at that point, it's all about finding people with character, using the processes we have where they self-select other people to be in a group that they trust, and then providing them with those resources, they'll quickly jump back on their feet.
Thanks, Simon. And just another one here for Zesly. What made you choose to pursue your career working to help people in poverty? We may just be very brief on that one, Zesly, because we've got a couple of other questions to go.
Yeah, I love this job, and I'm so passionate about it. I'm also Christian, and I believe that this is a calling for me. So that's what makes me stay and continue doing this job for this long time.
Thank you. And Simon, you've been working in and with poor communities for more than 20 years now. And if you can be a voice for families living in poverty, what would you say to us now?
Right. You know, we have been doing this for 40 years, but I think it was a slow burn for the first sort of 15 or 20, because I remember when we started, we still had a catch cry that we wanted to convince people that the poor were trustworthy and could actually be trusted with a loan. What I want people to hear is the poor are incredibly trustworthy. They pay back at a much higher rate than we do in the West. The 98% is a real figure. They pay that money back and can be trusted with that money. So as I said earlier on, the lesson that I live with, the lesson that drives me, is the poor aren't lazy, and they really do want to look after their family, and they really do want to feel good in the process. So if we can give them a sustainable way forward for them to do that, they will come to the party and make us proud, and we'll be proud of them.
No, that's great. And look, I may, there's a few more questions which I may sort of combine into the one, because they're sort of a similar theme. And one of those is, what role does opportunity have to play in this crisis? And then another similar question, and I may ask you to initially answer that, Simon, and then perhaps on to Zesly for a little bit more detail, because another related question is, what assistance does TLM need at this point to help your staff and your business come through strong out of this? So maybe, Simon, if you could answer in the first instance, and then Zesly can maybe add a couple of things that are particularly pertinent to TLM.
Sure. I think the first thing that we will be focusing on, well, we're already focusing on, is helping to use our relationships to get the messages out there to people. Like, we meet with these people every week, and therefore we have 6 million relationships that we're meeting with weekly. So as we can use those to get information out about COVID and about the implications and how to protect people from them. And one of the key areas, I don't know if any of you caught Jess's webinar about 2 weeks ago. We have about 4,500 clients of ours that we've trained up as what we call community health leaders. And they actually give training in health and support in health to over 6 million people. So they are focusing very much on the COVID response and how to do hand washing and how to protect people. We're also, as you heard, through TLM and many of our other partners, are using those relationships and partnering with other organisations to distribute essential items such as soap and PPE where it's possible, at least face masks. And then the third one is what I spoke about before. It's really about us understanding, and our partners will meet with every client individually to understand the situation they're in and whether or not a loan needs to be written off, which will happen in the odd occasion, or whether or not it needs to be, the repayments just need to be postponed. But we will work out a way to work with those clients to rebuild their businesses through providing resources and training.
Now that's great. Thanks, Simon. And look, we're running out of time now, but Zesly, is there anything in particular that you can add to what Simon has said? It'll need to be quite brief.
Yeah, I understand from the situation now that what is needed by our clients today is that we have to be with them. We need to be supportive in this kind of situation, and also I think this situation teaches us a lesson about respecting each other, because we need each other. So if you ask me about that question, it's hard to answer, but I think one practical thing that the LM will do is we will continue releasing loan even we have to get it smaller, because these people need it. As the value of the capital is already going down. So this is about saving lives and also protecting staff, lasting the institution. But I think we have to find ways, and we can go through this.
Well, thank you, Zesly. And I'd just like to pass on, there are a number of people who have met online, who've met you before, Zesly, and have also met Simon, who are passing on their best wishes and their greetings to you both. But look, that's all the time we've got for questions now. So just to wrap up on a few things, well, thank you all for your questions. There were some great ones there. And while we haven't been able to, there's a few that we haven't been able to address, so please get in touch with us directly if you'd like to talk further. And thank you so much again, Simon and Zesly. I've so enjoyed, as I'm sure we all have, hearing from you both. And Simon, hearing those stories about how resourceful our clients are and how small loans can transform their lives was really inspiring. And Zesly, it's been such a privilege to have you with us this evening and to hear firsthand how things are going in the midst of COVID-19 actually on the ground. And it's only through our amazing partners like TLM that we and our wonderful supporters here in Australia can help those in need. So thank you. And so what next? Just to wrap up now, what can we all do, and what can folk online joining us now do? And I think the first thing we'd like to say is that you can stay informed, which can be through our webinar sessions, and we're hoping this is the second of what we hope will be a few more to come. And also our various communications like our agency magazine or other trusted sources that you may have in your world. And we'd love you to also bring others along on this journey. We'll be hosting another webinar on Wednesday the 13th of May with our Asia Programs Director, Mark Daniels, who many of you will know. So please look out for your invitation to that. And we encourage you to invite your family and friends, and to also share the recording from tonight, which we'll get out to you in the next day or two. And of course, you can also donate to our crisis appeal, which is on our website. And we have needs here in Australia, but the most vulnerable, the families we help, need our help now more than ever. And as Simon mentioned, our health education program, and particularly hygiene at the moment, is so crucial. And we also need to support our client families with essential items such as food, soap, and sanitary products. And also, most importantly, small loans are going to be crucial for families to restart their businesses and rebuild their lives out of this crisis. And you'll also see an option on our website for you to sign up for monthly giving, if this suits some more at this time. And also, please get in touch with us. We would love to connect with you one-to-one. And well, that's all for now. We thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on our next webinar on the 13th of May. So good night, everyone, and stay safe.